Hi, welcome to Friday night's video on our Master Series. This is the 78th video in our Master Series and the 10th video in our mixing concepts. First of all, we're going to talk about the equal loudness contour, so I suggest you go back and watch the video on my channel about the equal loudness contour to familiarize yourself with it. But as far as in mixing concepts, this can be a very difficult thing because sometimes that when you start dealing with equal loudness contour, that it can be very helpful. If I'm mixing vocals, we talked about this in the processing series or processing phase when we did equalization. So I suggest you go back and also watch those videos on equalization. The concept here and the difficult part about this is that the equal loudness contour will dictate, like if you're say, well, I'll normally use the one here about 80 dB. Now, the concept about this is that if you follow these levels exactly throughout your mix and all your levels look exactly like that, there's a really good chance your mix isn't going to come out sounding as good as you might think. Because some instruments sound really good like that. Some instruments have issues that you're really getting too much high end, too much bass end, and you got some subtraction here and boosting here that might cause problems. So, but to mix by it, and also to remember that your meters and stuff, we'll talk about that in the next video, trusting your meters and your eyes are going to tell you different things. Your ears are going to tell you that you can't hear the level of the bass as well or the upper end as well, and you start boosting it up, and your meters are telling you that the high end frequency content and the low end frequency content's going through the roof while this other stuff's really super quiet. And so it's causing your levels in your DAW to like peak out or clip and do all kinds of stuff because you're boosting the heck out of them so you hear them correctly, so that your bass level sounds really good and loud, as equally as this down here does around 500 hertz or this stuff does. And same with your upper level stuff around 10K or something, sounds like it's going through, or looks like it's going through the roof on your meters, and it's trying to peak out on you on your meters, but the other stuff is way soft. Does that make sense? Because your ear hears sound that way and it wants you to mix that way so that it can hear it well. That way that, it doesn't hear, it's hearing these levels like they're the same level as this stuff around here, so things become really clear. So everything in its place is very clear because they're not at different levels that you can't hear the bass very well. And you can't hear the upper hand very well. Well, you can hear this stuff pretty well. And there's also some boosting here between here and between 2 and 5. There's some subtraction there. Between 1 and 2 normally here, and between 2 and 5 there's some subtraction to try to mix the levels to where your ear hears them at the same level. This is a huge concept. So really keep that in mind when you're mixing, when you start trying to mix things together, that when you're doing subgroup mixing and we're doing main mixing, that this concept is huge, because sometimes it can cause you to rework the equalization work that you've done on tracks. You start trying to sidechain them together on your spectrometer and trying to see them together and realize you can't really hear those levels as well as you want, and you start trying to re-EQ things so that you can hear them well. It's okay, because basically your ear is trying to get you to mix at these levels anyway so it can hear it all clearly. That doesn't mean that you always will. Sometimes you won't. There's times where I got productions and I got the bass end really low because I don't want it to be hearing at the same level as I got this over here. I want this stuff louder. I don't want this really loud over here. I want this down here. And of course I got this stuff louder. I got the bass end boosted way up because I really want you to focus on the bass, or I really want you to focus on the high end, so I'm not following that all the time. That's a really simple example of sometimes you just don't do that to get it sounding the way you want. So there's really no way to teach that, because it's a preference that you are going to choose artistically in getting the mix done the way you want it. But just keep in mind that things will sound clearer when you go by these levels, and when you don't, some things aren't going to sound as clear, and it may you may perceive it as mud in your mix and all kinds of things, because the bass, like you got the bass end, and if you had cranked it up and did a little more EQ on it, work on it, and better EQ work on it, it wouldn't sound muddy, but you've got it way down and EQ'd horribly, so it sounds muddy on the background. So that's another really simple example of sometimes it's because you didn't do a good job of what you're trying to do, and that can be the same thing for the high end also. So really keep that in mind. So I just want you to take that in consideration, really think about it, and experiment with it. Does that make sense? And go back and watch those videos I recommended and really start working on that and thinking about it. You can even get a picture of it and look at it while you're doing mixing to see what's going on there. Is there a reason why you're not turning up those levels or pulling those levels down or something like that? Because the way you hear it, do you want to sound like that, or is it because you don't know? And you don't know to boost the bass up or boost the high end up or boost a little here or subtract there, because you're not aware that that's going to make it sound better. Or you might not want to, because no, I do want this in here to be sounding louder. I don't want you paying attention to that stuff over here or this bass end, because it's taking away from what I'm trying to do. That, whatever that might be. So it's really hard to teach you what you might be trying to do when I have no idea what you might be trying to do in some certain type of production or with some genre or in some certain situation. So the next thing I wanted to show is I've got iZotope plugins, and I love my iZotope stuff. So I don't mean to push any type of software or anything, but I love my iZotope stuff. I just do. So, and there's a problem that I've found. They have this tonal balance control that normally is for a mix, but you can also put it on subgroups and things like that. And if I go to like modern here, it's looking like this. I found out this really funny deal that this is basically supposed to be the contour of the frequency that's got this modern sound. And you can also put in, I chose an album and I had it create a curve from this song. And you can create your own curves however you want it. But this is just like modern, right? And I went through it. And if you go by the equal loudness contour, that you're going to have this bass end going up, all this stuff going on, which it doesn't really look like this here. You see that bass end going up, but it just starts diving off. Whereas here it's diving off, and it's not continuing to dive off. Right? It's just not. But as far as this tonal balance thing is saying that normally in this type of reduction, it'll bounce off there. Well, I was like, that's not right. But then I went through and I realized that I use the equal loudness contour, but it's not as strict as this a lot of times in some of my productions. And I realized that my contour was doing this around 500 hertz. But after that, it was going up like here, and then I had it trailing off because I didn't want this boomy stuff down the low end. And up around 500 hertz, it was following basically this curve, but it also did that little boost between 1 and 2 inside of this area, and then it went down to nominal level again, and then between 2 and 5, it was actually curving out some there, and then it was actually boosted up a little bit but then it was tailing off because I had put an EQ on there and brought it in so that I didn't have all this high-end hiss going on. So it was really strange that it still followed the equal loudness contour, but inside it was perfectly inside of this, and it sounded great, except for the high end. I had some high end that was coming out of there, going up around 10K, because I was trying to get the high end to sound better. So it wasn't really following that, but it did tail off really fast after that, just like it shows on here. After about 10K, it just starts plummeting. So after about 10K, it started going up there, and then just plummeted down like it shows here. Does that make sense? But up in here, between 5 and 10K, it did go up a little bit. It wasn't quite as drastic as you see here, but it still did. So, I mean, and for the most part, it stayed within these parameters of what they think is a normal modern production. So it was a little different if I went to like bass heavy or something like that. And it's more, flat out German. You can look at a lot of spectrograms that'll actually have an algorithm on there that actually puts a line on there that's going down at an angle. That's what that's there for. So anyway, that's something you really need to take into consideration. And I've learned that in my productions. And that's sometimes I'll get into productions and I'll go way outside of this for some type of production. no matter which either one of these orchestral or whatever one I choose, that I'll go outside of it to where it sounds good. But I always take it into consideration and take this into consideration. Does that make sense? And it's a really good idea. A plugin like this can really help you to put in, like I've got this song by Seal that I put in there, and it created this curve from that song. So I could really go, what was going on there? Well, he's got that coming up there, and he's got it dropping off down here. He more than likely he might have been dipping or boosting between 1 and 2 here. It's hard to tell about it. And between 1 and 5, or 2 and 5, is obviously was kind of trying to dip down there, and then it was trying to come back up to 10, and then drop off again. So it was probably really following it pretty well, just not drastically. Because I've found drastically following the equal loudness contour helps really well when you're dealing stuff like vocals. Vocals, I can put the equal loudness contour on there, and then put it on there full steam ahead, and then start adjusting it a little bit, and the vocals sound awesome. If the vocal sounds good in any way, shape, or form when you recorded it, it just makes it sound crystal clear. All the harmonics sound where they're supposed to be and just sounds great. Sometimes it didn't work out that way on the oboe I was working on, or some other instrument, and especially a synth patch. I'll be like, oh, that didn't work at all on that synth patch. It just totally mangled my synth patch trying to work with it like that. And then I started working at it from these levels to see if it was helping or hurting. So really take that into consideration, and look into that and think about it when you're mixing, because it can very much help you to as you're becoming a better engineer, to really think about it. And it will help you make you a better engineer, because you will have that in mind and understand the importance of that as far as your mind and your hearing are concerned, that it's very valid thing to you to take into consideration and adapt as one of your mixing concepts. Peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.